The modern defense, also called the rat, is a very effective and flexible defense that can be used against almost any opening chosen by white. The modern defense is characterized by the development of the king's bishop to the fianchetto. For example, after e4, black answers with g6, with the idea of developing his king's bishop through the fianchetto. White can respond with d4, occupying the center with his pawns. Black responds with bishop to g7, placing his bishop on a good diagonal, from where it will exert pressure against the opponent's pawn center. Black's plan is to allow white to occupy the center with his pawns, to be able to attack and destroy it. In this way, black has a clear attacking objective and, if he manages to succeed in destroying the enemy center, then he will obtain an advantage. Black is not content with balancing the game but wants to play for a win. In the modern defense, many pieces are kept on the board and complex positions are reached from a tactical and strategic point of view, which offers many real possibilities to fight for victory. In addition, it is a very flexible defense that allows many different orders of moves, and the important thing is to understand the general ideas and plans, not to memorize the variants. Black tries to provoke white to get confident in attack too soon, which would be a mistake, since black has a solid position and will be able to quickly go for the counterattack. The secret in modern defense is to identify the right pawn break and assess the opportune moment to attack the center. Black has many possible plans to counterattack. He can advance one or two squares with his queen's pawn or with his c-file pawn. Although less common, a break in the center with e5 is also possible. He can also advance even with his queenside pawns to attack in that area. It can also be transposed towards the Pirc defense if black develops his king's knight towards the f6 square. Although black usually deliberately delays the development of his king's knight and avoids placing it too early on the f6 square. In this way, the bishop on g7 can exert all its power along the large diagonal of dark squares and attacks against the center. On the other hand, having not yet placed the knight on f6, white's attack with e5 is not as effective, since white's pawn would not attack anything if it advances. The game can continue in many ways. For example, after knight to c3. Now, black can follow two basic strategies. He can attack on the black squares or on the white squares. For example, they can make the move d6, to prepare the breaks in the center with e5 or with c5, to increase the pressure against the d4 point and attack against the dark squares. Or he can also attack on the white squares. For example, he can make the move c6, with the idea of preparing the break in the center with d5. If white plays the c4 move, in the style of the king's Indian defense, then the attack on the white squares through the d5 break will not be so easy to carry out, since white has a firm control over the d5 square. So, perhaps, in this case the best thing for black is to continue with d6, with the idea of preparing breaks in the center with e5 or c5, attacking on the black squares. When black makes the break in the center with c5 and white captures on c5, or he allows capture on d4, then the game reaches a Maroczy type structure. In the Maroczy structure white has good control over the d5 square and pressure along the d-file. For its part, black has to look for its counterattack possibilities and its main objective is to attack against the pawns on e4 or c4, to eliminate at least one of those pawns and free himself from the pressure. He will be able to prepare the break with a6 and b5 on the queenside, to attack against the c4 pawn, or he can also prepare the break with f5, to eliminate the e4 pawn. When black makes the central break c5, white can also advance with d5. This leads to Benoni type structures. Typical plans for black in this type of structure are to expand with his pawns on the queenside, preparing to break with b5. Or he can also attack in the center with the e6 break. If black attacks in the center with the e5 break and white advances with d5, then positions similar to the king's Indian defense are reached. In this type of position the center is blocked and black will try to attack on the kingside, which is where he will have more space for his pieces. They will prepare the break with f5, to attack against the base of the opponent's pawn chain and will try to organize the attack against the kingside. For his part, white will try to attack on the queenside, preparing the break with c5, attacking against the base of the opponent's pawn chain. If black attacks in the center by breaking with e5 and white captures on e5 or allows black to capture on d4, then we arrive at this type of structure that is also characteristic of the king's Indian defense. In this type of position, black will be able to use the e-file to press against the e4 pawn, while white will try to press along the d-file and place a knight on the d5 square, to exert pressure against the opponent's position. Black will also be able to advance with the move c6, to take control over the d5 square and prevent a white piece from being installed on that square. At the same time, black will be able to activate his queen on the b6 square, to put pressure on the black squares and counterattack on the queenside. The weakness of the d6 pawn will be difficult to attack and black will have good counterplay possibilities thanks to the activity of his pieces. In summary, the modern defense is a hypermodern defense that is characterized by the development of the king's bishop to the fianchetto. The bishop is like a sniper who attacks the opponent's pawn center from a distance. Black's plan is to attack against the center, using the pieces to press from afar and perform a well-timed pawn break to blow up the opponent's pawn center. In the following videos we will study all these plans in practical games.